the technique that was hidden inside you. Before words, there were symbols. Before books, there were temples. And before your mind, there was the vibrational memory of the soul. This isn't a story about learning something new. It's a journey of remembering something ancient. For centuries, the Egyptian initiates didn't teach truth. They revealed it through silence, vibration, and sacred rituals of remembrance. Because the soul doesn't evolve by adding, it evolves by removing the false. This video is not just content, it's a portal. And if you're watching it now, it means the portal is already open within you. Chapter 1: The Forgotten Technique of the Egyptian Initiates. Before the word, there was the vibration. Before the mind, there was the memory. And before you forgot, your soul already knew. The ancient Egyptians never believed the soul should be taught. They believed it should be remembered. In the sacred temples of Kemet, hidden within stone and sun, the priests guided initiates through silent rituals where the body would rest, but the consciousness would travel. A symbolic death, a crossing beyond the veil. And when they returned, they weren't the same. They hadn't learned. They had remembered. This wasn't knowledge, it was frequency. A secret technique, not forbidden because it was dark, but because it was too bright to be controlled. The Egyptians knew every soul carries a sacred name, a frequency that can't be spoken, only embodied. That name lives inside you now, dormant, silent, but pulsing. And if you're hearing this, maybe the memory has already begun. Chapter 2: The Invisible Call. Do you really think you found this video by accident? That it just appeared on your screen by some stroke of luck? The ancient Egyptians would say otherwise. They called it Nokar, the invisible breath of the divine, a silent force that moves the soul before the mind even notices. This call doesn't come from outside. It begins as something subtle, a weariness of living asleep, a quiet question that won't go away, a discomfort with the truths you were raised to believe. That's how the soul begins to stir in the sarcophagus of the ego. Because you're not here to learn something new, you're here to remember what never left you. And when that remembrance begins to rise, the world around you starts to shift. You see signs. Time feels different. People leave your life like misaligned puzzle pieces, and others appear like echoes of ancient promises. This is not your imagination. It's the first alignment between your vibration and your true identity. The priests of the Temple of Isis taught, the first sign of awakening is the external world losing its hold over you, and the internal light beginning to rise. This light doesn't come from intellect. It doesn't come from spiritual ego. It rises from your original frequency, pulsing beneath the noise. This call does not shout. It whispers. But if you listen, it leads you back home. You weren't drawn to this by chance. You were pulled by sacred resonance. Because the Egyptian technique we're reactivating now isn't a method of doing. It's a technique of remembering. And to remember is the soul's most revolutionary act. Chapter 3: Why it was hidden. Not everything was lost. Some things were hidden on purpose. The Egyptian technique of vibrational remembrance didn't disappear. It was sealed. Not because it was dangerous, but because it was too powerful to control. The ancients knew, when the soul awakens, it becomes sovereign, and a sovereign soul cannot be ruled. That's why what was once taught in the temples of Luxor, Karnak, and Dendera, through symbols, initiations, and silence, was slowly dismantled. The initiation chambers were replaced with dogma. The sacred mantras became empty words, and the sound of the soul was replaced by the echo of fear. What was internal became external ceremony. What was sacred became secret. But the secret was never the technique. The true secret was, who are you without the world on top of you? And that was too dangerous to leave out in the open. The threat wasn't to empires or religions. It was to the system of collective forgetting. A system built to keep you distracted, divided, and disconnected from your true self. The Egyptian priests said, "If you wish to hide something sacred, place it where no one will look, within themselves." And so it was. The technique was hidden inside you, encoded in your energetic field, written in the rhythm of your breath, inscribed in the pulse of your spiritual heart. Now, after thousands of years, this vibration is rising again, not as external knowledge, but as an inevitable remembrance. Those who tried to erase it failed for one reason. You can't destroy what's etched into the soul. They buried the papyri, they desecrated the temples, but the true temple was never touched, because it lives where time cannot reach, in the eternity of your consciousness. And now, it's beginning to open again. Chapter 4. The 3 Keys of Reawakening. The Egyptians didn't use manuals. They used portals, and each portal could only be opened with a very specific vibration. They didn't speak in doctrine. They lived by resonance. In the mystery schools of ancient Egypt, initiates weren't seeking more information. They were seeking 3 keys that would reawaken the soul's eternal memory. These 3 keys still exist. They are within you now, dormant, yet alive. And the moment to use them has come. First key, vibrational silence. This is not the silence of absence. It's the silence of absolute presence. In the chambers of Isis and beneath the temple of Saqqara, initiates would remain in complete silence for days, not to hear something, but to clear the internal noise. Because the first veil is always the mind, and while the mind talks, the soul waits in stillness. Vibrational silence doesn't isolate you from the world. It realigns you with your origin. The true voice of your being can only be heard in the center of stillness. That's where your frequency begins to remember itself. Second key, the living symbol. Egyptian symbols weren't meant to explain, they were meant to activate. The Eye of Horus wasn't just an amulet, it was a vibrational mirror. The lotus flower wasn't decoration, it was a symbol of internal rebirth. The Uraeus serpent on the pharaoh's forehead wasn't ornamental, it was the sign of awakened energy rising to the third eye. When you focus on a sacred symbol with presence, you don't imagine it, you remember it. Not with belief, but with inner knowing. Because symbols speak the language of the soul, and the soul understands without words. Third key, resonance with the hidden name. Every soul, the Egyptians said, carries a secret name. Not a sound, but a living frequency that defines its divine identity in the cosmos. This name cannot be given to you, it must be recognized. They called it Ren Netjer, the divine name. And it's not something you say, it's something you embody. When you align with that name, you no longer doubt, you simply know. There are no questions, only certainty in stillness. You don't speak it aloud, you live it from the inside out. And when these 3 keys, silence, symbol, and resonance come together, the technique doesn't just awaken, it begins to live through you. Chapter 5. How to Recognize Your Truth. In the solar temples of Heliopolis, the ancients said, "Your real name isn't spoken, it is remembered with the whole being." Truth doesn't shout, it resonates. It doesn't argue, it reveals itself, like the first light piercing the darkness of the inner chamber, and that light is you. But how do you know what's true in a world that taught you to forget? How do you feel the difference between your essence and the echo? The Egyptians taught a sacred formula, not with numbers but with vibration. If it brings you closer to your real self, if it creates a quiet warmth in your chest, if it brings peace before it brings explanation, it's truth. Truth doesn't trap you in belief. It frees you from the need to explain. It isn't mental, it's vibrational. It doesn't convince you, it recognizes you. And when you come into contact with it, something ancient rises from within, like the Ba, the winged soul of Egypt, lifting out of the body to remember its divine name. This truth doesn't come as an idea, it comes as a presence. You stop searching for proof, because now, you are the proof. Your body aligns, your breath shifts, your gaze deepens, and suddenly, without learning anything new, you know, this was always within me. It is not new. It is older than time and deeper than thought. And now, it begins to rise through you. Chapter 6. The Language of Your Soul's Sacred Name. Ren Netjer. The Divine Frequency. The ancient Egyptians knew everything that exists has a name, but not every name can be spoken. The most sacred name isn't the one you received at birth. It's the one your soul carries from before time began. They called it Ren Netjer, the divine name. It is not sound, it is living vibration, a unique energetic frequency etched into the eternal fabric of creation. When you vibrate this name, even without knowing how, you don't get closer to God. You remember you are part of God. That's why the priests of Luxor taught, to pronounce the name is to awaken the sleeping God within. But here's the truth no one ever told you. You don't need to know this name as a word, because the soul doesn't speak in letters. It speaks through states of being. Your divine name reveals itself when your thoughts, emotions, and actions align with your essence. It's not spoken, it is embodied. And once you embody it, the world around you begins to respond. Doors open, patterns shift, coincidences disappear, and are replaced by sacred synchronicities. Because now, the universe is no longer responding to your ego. It's responding to your Ren. And in that moment, you no longer seek permission. Because you are the key. You are the password. You are the portal, unfolding from within. This is the silent sound the initiates heard in the deepest halls of the temple, when all words fell away, and all that remained was the vibrational certainty of being. And then, with their eyes closed, they began to see. With their bodies still, they began to travel. And with their divine name pulsing in the chest, they returned, remembering. Chapter 7. The Moment of Crossing. The soul steps forward. There comes a moment in the journey when the seeker stops walking with their feet and begins to walk with presence. This moment is the crossing. In Egyptian lore, it was symbolized as the weighing of the heart, a sacred rite before Ma'at, the goddess of truth, where the soul's heart was placed on one side of a scale and a single feather on the other. But it wasn't a judgment from the gods. It was an inner alignment. Because to pass through the veil, the soul had to be light. Not light from forgetting, but light from illusion. And that's the moment you face now. Everything that is not truly you begins to fall away. The masks, the old roles, the borrowed fears, the inherited desires, all burned away by the sacred fire of truth. What remains? Only that which is eternal, the pure vibration of your being. You don't need to die to cross this threshold, but you do need to let die the character, the one who learned to please, hide, control, conform. Because the real you doesn't seek to fit in, it already belongs. At the crossing, you feel a subtle but irreversible shift. You realize you're no longer thinking about spirituality. You're embodying it in your breath. You are no longer visiting the temple. You are the temple. And life begins to respond to this vibration. Words become less important. Truth begins to speak through action. Cycles collapse on their own because your soul no longer recognizes them. This is the turning point, where the path stops being a quest and becomes a living remembrance. The Egyptian crossing wasn't about death. It was about rebirth with awareness. And now, your inner Nile begins to flow again. You're not returning to the past. You are bringing the ancient present into now. You are crossing. And what comes next won't be about seeking anymore. It will be about holding the memory with every step. Chapter 8. Walk as one who remembers. After the initiate crossed the veil, the Egyptian priests didn't give them a new name. They gave them a new rhythm. Because one who remembers doesn't just think differently, they walk differently. The walk of an awakened soul has a subtle gravity. It's not arrogance, it's quiet presence. The true initiate doesn't need to claim anything. They radiate what they know, and the world responds. To walk as one who remembers is to live unmasked, to stop asking for permission to be whole, to refuse to shrink into who you once were just to keep others comfortable. It means to speak less and vibrate more. It means turning simple gestures into echoes of the inner temple, eating with awareness, looking with reverence, breathing as if you're praying, acting as if the gods within are watching, not to impress, but to honor your frequency. The Egyptians taught that after awakening, the soul must learn to sustain its vibration in movement. Because it's easy to remember in stillness, but the true path is to remember in the middle of the world. That's when the technique becomes real. Not when you are alone, but when you are challenged, misunderstood, or dismissed. And still, you do not forget who you are. This is the real ritual. To live among those who sleep, without going back to sleep yourself. To walk as one who remembers is to be a lighthouse, without needing to shine. To be present, without needing to be seen. It's to know that real power is not in doing magic, but in living with such coherence that the world begins to harmonize around you. You are no longer looking for the path. You are the path in motion. And one who walks remembering activates remembrance in others without speaking a word. Chapter 9. The collective awakening is happening in silence. Something is happening right now, but it's not loud. It's not on the news. It's not trending. And that's why it's real. The ancient Egyptians called it Shem-Su-Hor, the followers of the light of Horus. Souls incarnated across lifetimes with a shared mission to remember and to help others do the same. You are not alone. In quiet places across the earth, men and women are hearing the same inner whisper. Something inside me is waking up. Some don't know how to name it. Others can no longer ignore it. But all feel the same thing. The time of remembrance has arrived. And the most sacred part of this awakening is that it's happening in silence. It doesn't need external temples, new dogmas, or perfect figures. The real spiritual revolution is unfolding in ordinary bodies, in simple lives, in eyes that meet and remember without a word. Have you noticed? People are stepping back from noise, feeling an invisible pull to look inward, to breathe consciously, to seek what cannot be bought, to remember what cannot be taught. This is not a trend, not an algorithm. It is mass vibrational alignment. The Egyptians prophesied that one day initiates from every age would reunite, not in one place, but in one frequency. That day is today, and this encounter is now. Because every time you choose to remember, you strengthen the invisible web of awakened souls who are changing the world without touching the world, not through force, but through frequency. And no empire can stop a revolution like that. Chapter 10. You are not alone in this. You are the trigger of remembrance in others. In every Egyptian temple, there were mirrors made of polished bronze, not to reflect the face, but to remind the initiate, you are the reflection of the divine in human form. The masters knew, the soul doesn't fully awaken until it sees its own light reflected in another. You're not here just to remember who you are. You're here to become a living activation for those who are still asleep. And that doesn't happen through words. It happens through embodied vibration. Because when someone meets a soul who lives what they remember, something ancient inside them stirs. Something they didn't know they'd lost. And you've already been that meeting for someone, even in silence, even without knowing. Every time you chose truth over performance, stillness over reaction, love over control, you were a mirror. And in that mirror, others saw a part of themselves they had forgotten. That's how awakening spreads. You don't have to carry the world, but you must live with such vibrational coherence that the world remembers what it is just by being near you. The Egyptians called this Heka, the sacred magic of living truthfully, speaking consciously, and vibrating with intention. You don't have to do more. You just have to be fully here. And in that presence, you become an invisible gate. And every person who passes through your field, every soul that looks into your eyes, every heart that hears your silence, receives something. Even if they don't understand, even if they resist, even if they run, the seed is planted. And that seed has a name: remembrance. Final call. The portal has already opened. If you've made it this far, it means something inside you already knew. Maybe it came as a whisper, maybe it roared like fire, but something brought you here, and that something doesn't miss. You're not watching this by chance. You're responding to a call that began before your name, before your body, before this lifetime. What you felt in this video wasn't content. It was sacred remembrance, and remembrance doesn't want to be saved. It wants to be lived. So don't let this flame fade. Leave a signal in the visible world that your soul has awakened. Write in the comments, I remember. This isn't just a phrase. It's a frequency that travels. Like this video, not for numbers, but so the algorithm can help spread remembrance to those still caught in forgetting. Share this with someone who needs to remember who they are. You may be the mirror they've been waiting for. Subscribe to this channel, not to follow a teacher, but to walk together as silent initiates from the same lineage. Because the time of waiting is over, and the soul that awakens now awakens others. The real revolution is silent, it's vibrational, and it has already begun with you. You're not here to learn. You're here to remember, and remembrance has already begun.